Ladies and gentlemen, can you trade the entire day with the same mental focus and power throughout the day as you had in the morning? Is it even possible? Trading is one of the few jobs on earth where working longer rarely produces better returns. But why? Why do we break discipline? Why do we do things that we're not supposed to? In other aspects of life, we might be very good at following the rules, and it's always produced a steady progress. But in trading, things are different. We do break discipline. We do things we're not supposed to do. Usually, most traders, as they are doing something they're not supposed to do, they actually know they're not supposed to be doing it. So it's not like you're disillusioned. It's not like, oh, I wasn't supposed to double and triple down. I wasn't supposed to take all these low conviction trades. Why do we tilt? Why do we take subpar trades? I want to go into the science of it. I am Mark Melnick, and welcome to the premiere of our Newsbeat Health Show. The following Newsbeat Health Show has been brought to you by T3 Live. Don't also forget to download our free ebook in the link of this video. All right, so we're going to start off. 3 men are doing time. This is a true story. 3 men are doing time in Israeli prisons, and they recently appeared before a parole board. Okay. It was consisting of a judge, a criminologist, and a social worker. The 3 prisoners had completed at least 2/3 of their sentences, but the parole board granted freedom to only one of them. Can you guess which one it was? So I'm going to go ahead and show you, and I want you to see if you could guess which one actually got the freedom. At 8:50 a.m., there was an Arab Israeli serving a 30-month sentence for fraud. At 3:10 p.m., there was a Jewish Israeli serving a 16-month sentence for assault. And at 4:25 p.m., an Arab Israeli serving a 30-month sentence for fraud. Take a guess. Which one of these people do you think got parole? It's a true story. It's a true story. Well, there was a pattern to the paroles board's decision, but it wasn't all related to the men's ethnic backgrounds, nor their crimes, nor their sentences. It was all about timing. Researchers discovered by analyzing over 1,100 decisions over the course of a year in this court what actually pans out and why. Judges who hear the prisoners' appeals and then get advice from other members of the board approve parole in about 1/3 of the cases, but the probability of being paroled actually fluctuated wildly throughout the day. Prisoners who appeared early in the morning received parole about 70% of the time, while those who appeared late in the day were paroled less than 10% of the time. The odds favored the prisoner who appeared at 8:50 a.m., and he did in fact receive parole. So if you guessed number 1, congratulations. But even though the Arab Israeli prisoner was serving the same sentence for the same crime, which was fraud, the same as case number 3 here, the odds were against him when he appeared on a different day at 4:25 p.m. in the afternoon. He was denied parole, as was the Jewish Israeli prisoner at 3:10 p.m., whose sentence was shorter than that of the man who was released. You want to know what the issue was, ladies and gentlemen? They were just asking for parole at the wrong time of day. And as somebody's pointing out in chat, correct, don't have surgery late in the day either. There was nothing malicious or even unusual about these judges' behavior. The judge's erratic judgment was due to the occupational hazard of being the decider. The mental work of ruling on case after case after case after case, whatever the individual merits, wore them down. This sort of decision fatigue can make quarterbacks prone to dubious choices late in the game and CFOs prone to disastrous decisions late in the evening. It routinely warps the judgment of everyone, executive, non-executive, rich, middle class, poor. In fact, it can take a special toll on the poor, a special toll on people with small accounts, and we're going to go into that as well. Yet few people are even aware of it. And researchers are only now beginning to understand why it happens and actually how to counteract it. See, what happened, ladies and gentlemen, is that people, human beings, go through something called decision fatigue. And I'm going to also teach you how to counteract it. And as the day goes on and on and on, your decision fatigue could turn your trading into something quite dangerous. Decision fatigue explains why ordinary, sensible people get angry at colleagues, families. They splurge on clothes, buy junk food at the supermarket, and can't resist the dealer's offer to rust proof their new car, even if it's an R8. No matter how rational and high minded you try to be, you can't make decision after decision without paying a biological price. It's different from ordinary physical fatigue. You're not consciously aware of being tired, but you're low on mental energy. And the more choices you make throughout the day, the harder each one becomes for your brain. And eventually, it looks for shortcuts like taking shitty setups, sizing in quickly so you could get the money quicker as opposed to actually working harder for it. Usually in either of two very different ways. One shortcut is to become reckless, to act impulsively instead of expending the energy to first think through the consequences. Sure, I'll tweet that photo of me grinding against this girl in the club. What could go wrong? And the other shortcut is the ultimate energy saver, is sit on your ass and do effing nothing. Instead of agonizing over decisions, avoid any choice whatsoever. Ducking a decision often creates bigger problems in the long run, but for the moment, it eases your mental strain. You start to resist any change in any potentially risky move, like releasing a prisoner who might commit a crime. So the fatigued, the psychologically decision fatigued judge on the parole board takes the easy way out, and the prisoner keeps doing time, even if it's not good for the prisoner. Decision fatigue is the newest discovery involving a phenomenon called ego depletion. In homage to a Freudian hypothesis, Freud speculated that the self or ego depended on mental activities involving the transfer of energy. These experiments demonstrated that there is a finite store of mental energy for exerting your own self control. When people fended off the temptation to scarf down a bunch of Reese's Pieces peanut butter cups or chocolate chip cookies, two of Melnick's weaknesses, they were less able to resist other temptations. Willpower turned out to be more than a full concept or a metaphor. It really was a form of mental energy that could be exhausted. The experiments confirmed the 19th century notion of willpower being like a muscle that was fatigued when used, a force that could be conserved by avoiding temptation. To study the process of ego depletion, researchers concentrated initially on acts involving self control, the kind of self discipline popularly associated with willpower, like resisting ice cream, for example. And people have to do this all the time. So, for example, you know, Eddie going down the aisle soon. When you get married, did they want plain white china or something with a pattern? Which brand of knives? How many towels? What kind of sheets? What kind of flowers? How many threads do you want per square inch? Eddie doesn't effing care. Just choose it already. Eddie's already mentally, he's decision fatigued. By the end, I could have talked you into anything after you were done making those decisions. So there was a nearby department store that was holding a go out of business sale thanks to COVID. And subjects were told they'll get to keep one item at the end of the experiment. But first, they had to make a series of choices before they could keep the item. Would they prefer a pen, a candle, a vanilla scented candle, a shit scented candle, a t shirt, a black t shirt, a red t shirt? A control group on the side, let's call them people who are non deciders, much like myself when I'm going out with my wife, spent an equally long period contemplating all these same products without having to make any choices whatsoever. This control group were just asked to give their opinion of each product and report how often they had used the product in the past year. Afterwards, all the participants were given one of the classic tests of self control, holding your hand in ice water for as long as you can before pulling it out. The impulse is, of course, to pull your hand out, so self discipline is needed to keep your hand underwater. Do you guys want to know what happened? The people who had to make the initial decisions of the pen or candle and everything, they were able, on average, to leave their hand in ice water for 28 seconds, while the non-deciders who were just asked to give their opinion of the products and how often they used it in the past year, they were able to leave their hand in ice water for 67 seconds on average. So 28 seconds for 67 seconds, making all those choices from the first group had apparently sapped their willpower, and it wasn't an isolated effect. You know, any decision, whether it's what pants to buy or even whether to start a war. Do you know when Caesar finished defeating the Gauls, he was by the Gaul River, and if he crossed the Gaul River, he would have declared civil war against Rome. And after a long battle and after a long war, Caesar actually decided to cross the river out of ease so he wouldn't have to walk all the way around, technically starting a war with Rome. This is known as the Rubicon model of action phases. Once you're mentally depleted, you become reluctant to make trade offs, which involve a particularly advanced and taxing form of decision making. What stocks you want to trade? What setups are there? What should I wait for? In the rest of the animal kingdom, there aren't a lot of protracted negotiations between predator and prey. The lion isn't running after the gazelle. Hey, baby, how you doing? That's a nice ass. I want to take a bite out of it. Should I bite you? Should I bite your friend? Your friend? All right, I'll leave you alone now. Like there's no form of communication. To compromise is actually a complex human ability and therefore one of the first to decline when willpower is depleted. You become what researchers like to call a cognitive miser, or you're hoarding your energy. If you're shopping, you're liable to look at only one dimension, like price, just give me the cheapest, or indulge yourself in quality, I want the very best. Decision fatigue leaves you vulnerable to marketers who know how to time their sales. Shopping can be especially tiring for the poor who have to struggle continually with trade offs. Most of us in America won't spend a lot of time agonizing whether we can afford to buy soap, but it can be a depleting choice, for example, in poor parts of rural India. So there was a Princeton economist from Jersey, and he flew out to India, and he offered people in 20 villages in Rajasthan, which is like Northwest India. He gave them a chance to buy a couple of bars of brand name soap for the equivalency of 20 cents or less. It was a steep discount off the regular price, yet even that sum was a strain for the people in the 10 poorest villages. Whether or not they bought the soap, the act of making the decision to buy it or not left them with less willpower, as measured afterwards in a test of how long they could squeeze a hand grip. You know, the hand grips here, they literally they literally said, how long can you squeeze this after making a decision if they bought soap or not? And you're wondering what's actually happening to your trading? Don't worry, I'm going to tie it all into you, and I'm going to explain to you why you're actually tilting and actually what you can do to counteract it, and you're going to be amazed. So stick with me. So, in the slightly more affluent villages that had more money, people's willpower wasn't affected significantly. Because they had more money, they didn't have to spend as much effort weighing the merits of the soap versus, say, food or medicine or clothing or whatever else they would need. They were able to hold the hand grips longer. There's an argument that this sort of decision fatigue is a major factor in trapping people in poverty. Because their financial situation forces them to make many trade offs. They have less willpower to devote to school, work, and other activities that might get them into the middle class. It's hard to know exactly how important this factor is, but there's no doubt that willpower is a special problem for poor people. Study after study have shown that low self control correlates with low income, as well with a host of other problems, including poor achievement in school, divorce, crime, alcoholism, drugs, poor health, you name it. Lapses in self control have led to the notion of, in quotes, the undeserving poor. But this is epitomized by the image of the welfare mom using food stamps, for example, to buy junk food. And I grew up in a dirt poor neighborhood, and I saw that all the time in the local Starrett City war bombs. But I urge you to have sympathy for someone who makes decisions all day on a tight budget. And there was a study, and it was found that when the poor and the rich go shopping, the poor are more likely to eat during the shopping trip. And this might seem like confirmation of their weak character. I mean, after all, they could have presumably saved money and improved their nutrition by eating meals at home instead of buying ready to eat snacks like, I don't know, like Cinnabons or Auntie Annie's with their pretzels, which contribute to the higher rate of obesity among the poor. But if a trip to the supermarket induces more decision fatigue in the poor than in the rich, it's because each purchase requires more mental trade offs. By the time you reach the cash register, you will have less willpower to resist that Snickers bar, that Mars bar, that Skittles, that Hubba Bubba bubble gum. Do they still make that shit? Not for nothing. These items are called impulse purchases. And this isn't the only reason that sweet snacks are featured prominently at the cash register. Did you guys notice that? When you go into a supermarket, all the junk food is right by the cash register. They have like a little soda machine. They have like the little refrigerator there with all the junk food right by the cash register. Um, So just when, with their willpower reduced, they're more likely to yield to any kind of temptation, but they're especially vulnerable to candy, soda, anything offering a quick hit of sugar. And this is going to be the key of how you can actually overcome some of the hard things in your trading. Okay. While supermarkets figured this out a very long time ago, only recently did we discover why. Psychologists have been studying performance on mental tasks without worrying much about the results being affected by certain types of product consumption. Psychologists almost like to envision the human mind as like a computer, focusing on the way it processed information. And in sort of their eagerness to chart the human equivalent of a computer chip, a computer chip brain, most psychologists neglected one mundane but essential part of the machine, the power supply, the brain. And like the rest of the body, the brain derived energy from glucose, the simple sugar that is manufactured from all kinds of food. So, for example, there were researchers at someone named Baumeister's lab, and he tried to refuel the brain in a series of experiments involving lemonade. One of them was mixed with either sugar, and the other one was mixed with a diet sweetener, like one of those fake sugars. The sugary lemonade provided a burst of glucose, the effects of which could be observed right away, and the sugarless variety tasted quite similar without providing that same burst of glucose. So, again and again, sugar actually restored willpower, but the artificial sweetener had absolutely no effect. The glucose would at least mitigate this ego depletion, this decision fatigue, and sometimes completely reverse it. And the restored willpower improved people's self control as well as the quality of their decisions, which is a very big part of trading. They resisted irrational biases when making choices, and when asked to make financial decisions, they were more likely to choose the better long term strategy instead of going for the quick payoff. The ego depletion was even demonstrated by dogs in a University of Kentucky a research study at the University of Kentucky, after telling dogs to obey, sit, and stay commands for 10 minutes, the dogs performed worse on self control tests and were also more likely to make a dangerous decision, like to challenge another dog's turf. But a dose of glucose for the dogs restored their willpower and it actually calmed them down. And despite this series of findings, the brain researchers still had some reservations about the glucose connections. I mean, personally, for me, my skepticism would come Well, yes, you could get glucose from many places. You could get them from fats. You could get them from nuts. You could get them from fruit and all these other things. But the problem is, if, for example, you eat a steak, which will eventually can convert into glucose, it makes your body work and it takes a very long time. As traders, we need sort of that glucose pick me up immediately. If we take solid, white cane sugar, we're going to crash. It's not going to be good for us. If we eat a healthier piece of protein or even nuts, pistachios, almonds, peanuts, it's going to take a long time. So choosing the right glucose is going to be the next part about it, and there's going to be three simple answers after I'm done explaining, what's actually happening here just a little further. So skeptics pointed out that the brain's overall use of energy remains about the same regardless of what a person is doing, which doesn't really square easily with the notion of depleting energy affecting your willpower. So what they did was they took 45 female dieters and recorded images of their brains as they reacted to pictures of food. Next, the dieters watched a comedy video forcing themselves to suppress their laughter. Forcing themselves to suppress their laughter, much like I can easily do with every female comedian on television. So the dieters first had to look at food, and then they had to watch a comedy video and literally force themselves to suppress their laughter. It's a standard, if cruel, way to drain mental energy and induce ego depletions. Then these 45 female dieters were then again shown pictures of food, and the new round of brain scans revealed the effects of ego depletion, more activity in the nucleus accumbens, the brain's reward center, and a corresponding decrease in the amygdala, which ordinarily helps control impulses by reminding you of what's bad. So the food's appeal registered more strongly, while impulse control weakened. Not a good combination for anyone on a diet, not a good combination for anybody who is day trading. But suppose people in this ego depleted state got a quick dose of glucose. What would the scan of their brains reveal? The result, just all right. Have you ever seen Sarah Silverman? I'm sorry. If you think she's funny, we are just worlds apart. I'll be like, hey, that's cool. I'm going to be over here. No, I don't want to come over later. I'm good. Uh, it's one of the phenomena of the world. The results of the experiment were announced at the Society for Personality and Social Psychology. It's the world's largest group of social psychologists, and it was reported that administering glucose completely reversed the brain's changes wrought by depletion. Apparently, depletion causes activity to rise in some parts of the brain and decline in others. Your brain does not stop working when your glucose is low, ladies and gentlemen. It stops doing some things and starts doing others. It responds more strongly to immediate rewards and pays less attention to long term prospects. The discoveries about glucose help explain why dieting is one of the uniquely difficult tests of self-control for us, and why people with these super strong willpowers and the rest of their lives that they could do a million things, they could mow the lawn, they could do this, do that, do this, do that, but they have such a hard time losing weight. They start out the day with these virtuous intentions, resisting the croissant at breakfast and resisting dessert at lunch, but each act of resistance will further lower your willpower. So when you're in the morning and you're looking at the best trades in the market, waiting for those best trades, you are deep diving your ego depletion and you are suffering straight up decision fatigue, which, good news, is very reversible. And we'll get to that. As your willpower weakens late in the day, you need to replenish it. As day traders, we have no choice with the immense amount of decisions. That's why when I look at these educational products and they're like, we want to show you everything to do everything, I'm like, this is so wrong on so many levels. and you're wondering why 95, 96, 97, 98% of your traders are failing. As your willpower weakens late in the day, you need to replenish it, but to resupply it, you need to give your body glucose. Well, that's sort of like a nutritional catch 22. In one hand, in order not to eat, a dieter needs willpower. But in order to have willpower, a dieter needs to eat. As the body uses up your glucose, it looks for a quick way to replenish the fuel, leading to your natural sugar cravings. And after performing a lab test requiring self control, people tend to eat more candy, but not other kinds of snacks like potato chips, some things that are salty and fatty. The mere expectation of having to exert self control makes people hunger for sweets. A sugar filled snack or drink will provide quick improvement in your self control and your self identification for good trades. But it's just a temporary solution. The problem is that what we identify as sugar doesn't help as much over the course of the day as the steadier supply of glucose we would get, for example, as I mentioned from before, from eating a lean piece of chicken or fish or other proteins or more nutritious foods than a candy bar, for example. The benefits now, to go back to the case earlier where case number one got patrol, the benefits of glucose were unmistakable in the study of the Israeli parole board. In the mid-morning, usually a little before 10:30, the parole board would take a break and the judges would be served a sandwich and a piece of fruit. The prisoners who appeared just before the break had only about a 20% chance of getting parole. 20%. But the ones appearing right after had around a 65% chance. So right after they ate, 65% chance to get parole. Right before they ate, 20% of parole. Isn't that nuts? The odds dropped again as the morning wore on, and the prisoners really didn't want to appear just before lunch because the chance of getting parole just before lunch was only 10%. After lunch, it soared up to 60%, but only briefly. Remember, that Jewish Israeli prisoner who appeared at 3:10 p.m. and was denied parole from his sentence for assault, he had the misfortune of being the sixth case heard after lunch. But another Jewish Israeli prisoner serving the same sentence for the same crime was lucky enough to appear at 1:27 p.m., not on this list, in the first case after lunch, and he was rewarded with parole. It must have seemed to him like a fine example of the justice system at work, but it probably had more to do with the judge's glucose levels. It's simple enough to imagine reforms for the parole board in Israel, like, say, restricting each judge's shift to half a day, preferably in the morning, spread out with frequent breaks for food and rest. But it's not so obvious what to do with the decision fatigue affecting the rest of society. Even if we even if we could afford to work half days, which we can as traders, we literally have people here working some of them 5 minutes a day in the Newsbeat live room, we would still end up depleting our willpower all day long. We have no way of knowing how much our ancestors exercised self control the day before iPhones and Netflix and TV and before there were social psychologists. But it seems like many of them were under less ego depleting strain. When there were fewer decisions to make back then, there was less decision fatigue. Today, we feel overwhelmed because there are so many choices, just like in the market, so many stocks, so many setups, so many positions, so many things to do. Your body may have dutifully reported to work on time, but your mind can escape the market or trading at any instance. A typical computer user looks at more than 3 dozen websites a day and gets fatigued by the continual decision making, whether you keep working on a project, whether you're looking for setups in the market or news, or whether you're checking out Facebook, following a link to YouTube, buying something on Amazon. You could do enough damage to your trading account or to your budget by shopping online in a 10-minute spree that will wreck your budget or your trading account for a year. And the cumulative effect of these temptations and decisions isn't intuitively obvious. Virtually no one has a gut level sense of just how tiring it is to decide, especially as traders. Big decisions, small decisions, they all add up. Choosing what to have for breakfast, where to go on vacation, whom to hire, what strategies to use, how long to trade, which setups, what is the market doing, where is the setup, what am I looking at, where's support, where's resistance, where's the breakout, how much to spend. These all deplete your willpower. And there's no telltale symptom of when that willpower is low. And if you continue trading with that willpower low, you might have very subpar results. And it is not your fault. You were just unaware. And that's why I'm making you aware. It's not like getting winded or hitting a wall during a marathon. You're like, all right, I'm tired. Ego depletion manifests itself not as one feeling, but rather as a propensity to experience everything more intensely. When the brain's regulatory powers weaken, frustrations seem more irritating than usual, impulses to eat, drink, spend, say stupid things feel more powerful, and alcohol causes your self-control to decline even further. I mean, you get enough liquor in me, I'll turn on Real Housewives of Orange County. I mean, yeah, there you go. I'll live on the edge like that. But like those dogs in the experiment, ego depleted humans become more likely to get into needless illogical routes in the market as traders, to take illogical shortcuts and favor short-term gains with delayed cost. And like the depleted parole judges, they become inclined to take the safer, easier option even when that option hurts someone else. Just like in trading, when you start sizing up on the stupid trades, you continue taking every single setup in front of you, you're more inclined to do it even though it's hurting you. Good decision making is not a trait. It's not a trait that human beings have in the sense that it's always there. It's a state that fluctuates. And studies show that people with the best self control are the ones who structure their lives so as to conserve your willpower, conserve your decision fatigue. They don't schedule, for example, endless back to back meetings. They avoid temptations like all you can eat buffets, and they establish habits that eliminate the good traders establish habits that eliminate the mental effort of making choices. Instead of deciding every morning whether or not to force yourselves to exercise, force yourself to do your bed, they set up regular appointments to work out with a friend. Instead of counting on willpower to remain robust all day, they conserve their willpower so that it's available for emergencies and important decisions. You want to know who makes every single choice in my life? My wife. She makes every single choice. Heck, you think I picked out this shirt? I don't make any decisions. I'm conserving my mental willpower at all times. I'm sitting there just using it in reserve when something big or some shit hits the fan. That's where I step up to the plate. But normally I'm just in the back. Just you want to decide where we go out with the kids? I don't give a shit. Oh, you want to go there for lunch and not there? Nah, I don't give a shit. Do whatever it's school. Whatever. Even the wisest people won't make good choices when they're not rested and their glucose is low. That's why the truly wise don't restructure their company at 4 p.m. They don't make major commitments during a cocktail hour. And if a decision must be made late in the day, they know not to do it on an empty stomach. The best decision makers, you're ready for this? The best decision makers are the ones who know when not to trust themselves. The best traders are the ones who know when not to trust themselves. So the next part is very simple. Well, what do you eat? What should you eat? What do you eat? You don't want to. And look, I'm not a dietitian. If you're allergic to anything, don't do it, obviously. But for me, you don't want to do something like, you know, pure sugar bar. You don't want to do something that takes a long time to digest, like a chicken or a steak. What you want is something that's quick to digest and healthy for you and will spike your glucose levels and get that glucose in your body as soon as possible to counteract the effects of decision fatigue. And I got three very simple recommendations. It's the simplest shit in the world. You ready? Apples, oranges, pineapple. You don't really want low glycemic things like blueberries. And again, if you're a diabetic, I'm not a doctor, whatever, do your own thing, know what's good for you. You wouldn't want to do like blueberries or raspberries. Those things are very low glycemic. You want something that's quick to digest and will feed your brain glucose. So you could literally go throughout the entire day and start micro snacking. Micro snacking is going to be a very important part of your day. If you start micro snacking on like oranges, tangerines, apples, you could even buy them in the supermarket in these little baggies that are pre-cut and separated. It makes life so much easier. And it's fuel like that which will help you prevent decision fatigue, help you prevent tilting, help you prevent giving back your day as you go on, and at least let you understand what is happening to you as the day goes on. I hope you guys like the premiere of the Newsbeat Health Show. Let me know what you think. Thumbs up the video if you like it, if you'd like to see more content like this. Happy trading, make money. I hope you guys had a wonderful July 4th. We'll see you guys tomorrow on the Newsbeat Live.